some of those huge agricultural farms, those cannabis facilities there in Ventura County, where federal agents were conducting ICE raids.
Breaking news now on KCAL News at 10. A standoff in Camarillo continuing into the night. Federal immigration agents facing off with hundreds of protesters in the darkness after a day of violence and arrests.
Whoa, wait, what? That's absolutely insane.
What happens when federal agents discover that California's illegal marijuana farms are actually fronts for child trafficking operations? They face bullets and save lives, exactly what ICE and CBP just accomplished in the most dangerous raid of 2025. While criminal networks opened fire to protect their trafficking empire,
Federal agents under gunfire while rescuing kids. That's absolutely insane. You'd think we are talking about a war zone, not California.
federal agents pressed forward, arresting 361 suspects and rescuing 14 exploited children from conditions that will shock you.
Wait, hold up. Illegal farms doubling as child trafficking fronts. That's beyond horrifying. And 361 arrests, 14 kids saved. These agents weren't just enforcing the law. They were walking straight into hell and still came out heroes.
This operation didn't just expose illegal farming. It revealed a criminal underworld willing to shoot federal officers rather than give up their human trafficking profits. Stay until the end to see how agents survived this gunfire and why this massive California takedown changes everything we know about illegal farm operations. Before we continue, be sure to hit the subscribe button as that fuels the effort behind these videos. Let's break it down. How ICE and CBP survived enemy gunfire to rescue trafficked children, and why this California raid exposed the darkest secrets of illegal farm operations.
You've got to be kidding me. Glass House Farms, the so-called legal cannabis giant hiding a trafficking ring. That's straight out of a crime thriller. These agents walked into what they thought was a drug bust and instead uncovered a nightmare.
July 10th, 2025. Federal agents stormed Glass House Farms expecting marijuana violations. They found armed traffickers willing to kill to protect their child exploitation empire. In what's quickly becoming the largest immigration enforcement operation since President Trump took office, ICE and CBP executed criminal search warrants at marijuana grow sites in Carpinteria and Camarillo, California. The operation targeted Glass House Farms facilities, which claimed to be the largest legal cannabis cultivator in the world. But what began as an investigation into illegal marijuana cultivation quickly revealed something far more sinister. As federal agents moved in, they encountered not just illegal workers, but evidence of child exploitation and human trafficking. Among those at the facilities were 14 migrant children who had been subjected to potential exploitation, forced labor, and human trafficking conditions. The scale of this operation was unprecedented.
This is just heartbreaking. They went in for an illegal grow and instead found kids trapped in a nightmare. 14 children exploited like property and agents literally risking their lives to pull them out. That's not just a raid, that's a rescue mission straight out of a horror story.
Federal officers arrested 361 illegal aliens from both sites, making this one of the most significant immigration enforcement actions in recent years. But it wasn't just the numbers that made this raid extraordinary. It was the level of resistance federal agents faced while trying to rescue children from exploitation. When ICE and CBP officers arrived at the facilities, they were confronted by more than 500 rioters attempting to disrupt the operation. 4 U.S. citizens were criminally processed for assaulting or resisting officers. The rioters damaged vehicles and, most shockingly, one violent agitator fired a gun directly at law enforcement officers who were trying to rescue trafficked children. The presence of armed resistance demonstrates just how much these criminal networks had to hide. They weren't simply protecting an illegal marijuana operation. They were protecting a human trafficking network that had embedded itself within California's cannabis industry. Among those arrested were individuals with extensive criminal histories that should shock every American. Roman Izquierdo, an illegal alien from Mexico, had been previously convicted of kidnapping, attempted sexual assault, and attempted child molestation. Even more disturbing, ICE had previously deported him in 2006, yet he managed to return to the United States and secure work at a facility where children were present.
That's absolutely infuriating. A convicted kidnapper and child predator deported once back in the US working near kids. How does that even happen? And people were firing at officers trying to save those children. This isn't just corruption, it's a total system failure.
Another arrestee, Juan Duarte Velázquez, also from Mexico, had been convicted of sexual assault and driving under the influence. Jose Orellana, who is from El Salvador, had convictions for DUI and hit and run with property damage. And Adriana Gonzalez, another offender from Mexico, had been convicted 3 times for burglary and a DUI. These weren't simply undocumented workers, they were dangerous criminals with violent histories who had found safe harbor at these California marijuana facilities. When criminal networks start shooting at federal agents, you know they're protecting something far worse than marijuana. As ICE and CBP officers moved in to secure the facilities and reach the exploited children, they found themselves under literal gunfire. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has now offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of this shooter, who remains at large.
Unbelievable. These weren't farmhands. They were career criminals hiding behind cannabis leaves. And now there's an armed shooter still out there after firing on federal agents. This isn't just a bust. It's a full-blown battlefield in California.
This wasn't a peaceful protest against immigration enforcement. This was armed resistance designed to prevent federal agents from rescuing children from exploitation. The willingness of these criminal networks to open fire on federal officers demonstrates the extreme measures they'll take to protect their human trafficking operations. Despite facing gunfire and violent resistance, federal agents pressed forward with their mission.
That's what real courage looks like. Agents taking bullets just to save kids. No politics, no headlines, just pure bravery. And those children finally being pulled out of the nightmare. That's the only bright spot in the entire horrifying story.
10 of these children who were unaccompanied have been transferred to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for appropriate care. Federal investigators are now looking into potential child labor and human trafficking violations at these sites. What makes this case particularly disturbing is that these children were being exploited at facilities that operated under the guise of legitimate business. Glasshouse Farms presented itself as a legal cannabis cultivator, but behind this facade was a criminal operation that placed children in proximity to convicted sex offenders and other violent criminals. The trafficking methods revealed in this operation show a sophisticated criminal enterprise. These networks deliberately used the cannabis industry as cover for human exploitation, knowing that marijuana farms often operate in remote locations with limited oversight. They created an environment where vulnerable children could be exploited while the operation maintained a veneer of legitimacy.
That's chilling. A legal business masking a child trafficking ring. That's not just deception. That's pure evil. Using the cannabis industry as camouflage. Genius-level criminality mixed with absolutely moral decay. It makes you wonder how many more legit operations are hiding something just as dark.
Criminal empire using California agriculture as cover for the worst crimes imaginable. The true significance of this operation goes far beyond immigration enforcement. It exposes a dangerous criminal ecosystem that has embedded itself within California's agricultural sector. They had become fronts for human trafficking and exploitation. When authorities executed their search warrants, they weren't met with compliance. They were met with organized resistance that included gunfire. This level of coordination demonstrates that these aren't isolated criminal actors, but part of larger networks willing to protect their trafficking operations at any cost.
So it's not just corruption, it's organized, weaponized resistance. Gunfire, coordinated attacks. These criminals weren't just defending plants, they were defending a billion-dollar nightmare. And the fact that it all hides in plain sight under legal business makes it even more terrifying.
Create environments where exploitation can flourish, hidden from public view. The response from federal agencies demonstrates a coordinated approach to dismantling these criminal networks. ICE and CBP work together to execute the search warrants, while the FBI has become involved in the investigation of the violence against federal officers. This multi-agency effort highlights the seriousness with which the federal government is approaching these human trafficking operations. According to DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, at the California marijuana facilities, ICE and CBP law enforcement rescued at least 14 migrant children from what looks like exploitation, forced child labor, and potentially human trafficking or smuggling while facing assault and even gunfire.
Finally, some real coordination and accountability. ICE, CBP, FBI all stepping up together to tear down a network that treats children like disposable labor. And to do it under gunfire, that's not just enforcement, that's heroism in action.
Our brave agents also arrested at least 361 illegal aliens, including criminals with convictions for sexual assault, serial burglary, hit and run, and DUIs. This operation is both a victory and a warning. It's a victory because 14 children have been rescued from exploitation, and 361 criminal aliens, including dangerous offenders, have been removed from American communities. But it's also a warning about how trafficking networks are using legitimate industries as cover for human exploitation. The operation also highlights the challenges federal agents face when enforcing immigration laws in sanctuary jurisdictions. Despite coming under gunfire while rescuing children, ICE and CBP officers face criticism from local politicians and violent resistance from organized protesters.
That's the part that stinks. Agents risking their lives to save kids and still getting slammed by politicians. Unreal. It's a win, yes, but also a wake-up call that politics should never come before protecting children from monsters hiding behind legitimate industries.
This political opposition to immigration enforcement creates environments where trafficking networks can operate with reduced fear of detection. As ICE officials stated, this is an ongoing battle against criminal networks that prey on vulnerable individuals. The operation at Glass House Farms is a significant disruption, but these trafficking networks adapt quickly. They view the exploitation of vulnerable children and adults as a business model, constantly evolving their tactics to avoid detection and enforcement. So what does this mean for American communities? It means recognizing that human trafficking operations often hide behind legitimate businesses. When federal immigration enforcement is obstructed, trafficking networks establish deeper footholds in American communities. Parents need to understand that children are being trafficked and exploited within industries that present themselves as legitimate. Communities need to support federal law enforcement efforts to identify and dismantle these trafficking networks. The success of this operation demonstrates what can be accomplished when federal resources are directed toward rescuing exploited children and removing dangerous criminals from our neighborhoods.
Exactly. This isn't just an ICE story, it's everyone's story. These criminals adopt like parasites, hiding behind normal jobs while destroying lives. If this operation proves anything, it's that turning a blind eye only helps the traffickers. Communities have to stand with the agents who are actually fighting for these kids.
ICE and CBP just proved that no criminal network, no matter how violent, can stop federal agents from rescuing trafficked children. 361 arrests, 14 children saved, and one message delivered. America will not tolerate trafficking operations on our soil. This operation delivered a massive victory against human trafficking networks, removing dangerous criminals from California communities and rescuing children from exploitation. Criminal networks continue adapting, using legitimate industries as cover for human trafficking operations. That's why it's more important than ever to support federal operations that prioritize rescuing victims, dismantling criminal networks, and restoring safety to American communities.
What a powerful ending. 361 arrests, 14 lives saved, and a clear message. America fights back. These agents didn't just bust a trafficking ring, they tore the mask off an entire criminal empire. If this doesn't wake up people to what's happening behind legit businesses, nothing will.
But a strategic shift in how America fights human trafficking by targeting the infrastructure that enables trafficking, including businesses that serve as fronts, federal agencies have demonstrated their commitment to attacking trafficking at its source. Do you support ICE and CBP agents who risk their lives under gunfire to rescue trafficked children? Should federal law enforcement have unlimited authority to raid illegal farms hiding trafficking operations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For more breaking ICE raids, child rescue operations, and federal takedowns of trafficking networks, hit subscribe to and ring the bell so you never miss a story that highlights America's heroes protecting our most vulnerable.
Absolutely, those agents deserve every ounce of respect. They're out there trading comfort for chaos, bullets for bravery, just to save innocent kids. Whether you agree with every policy or not, you can't deny their courage. This is a kind of story that reminds you what real heroism looks like.